So, if you have at least watched a couple of my videos, you were probably thinking, oh, here goes Reptaris trying to just smash two things together in a way to just make it to make it really nice for the algorithm. And you know what, that's true, but also life is an algorithm, and allow me to explain. So a few days ago, as of this recording, my wife and I took our now 11-year-old to go see our very first musical ever, Wicked. And it was absolutely fantastic, an absolutely memorable evening, and hey, I know there's now a movie coming up too, so hey, that works out for life being an algorithm. And I thought it was very interesting that a lot of the beats themselves were very reminiscent of the Metal Gear Solid saga, or more specifically, the original Solid Snake, Big Boss. And you need to think about it like this. These two properties are telling the exact same story about power, corruption, and what happens when idealistic heroes realize that they're living in a system that is designed to break them. And for those of you who haven't spent 80 hours playing Metal Gear Solid games, first of all, how dare you? Here's what you need to know. The series primarily follows Big Boss, a legendary soldier who starts as a true believer in American military power and ends up becoming the world's most notorious terrorist after discovering how deeply corrupt the system really is. Does that sound familiar, Wicked fans? Because that is literally Alphabet's story. Just swap out military bases for Shiz University. And as for gamers wondering why I'm talking about a Broadway musical, Wicked isn't just The Wizard of Oz, but with more green and from the point of view of the witch. Gregory Maguire's novel and the musical it inspires tells the story of Elphaba, a passionate idealist who discovers that Oz's beloved wizard is actually a dictator systemically stripping rights from talking animals and using propaganda to maintain control. If you're thinking, hey, that sounds like every Metal Gear villain's plot, then congratulations, you see the world through my eyes a little bit, and I am starting to realize that I am essentially living a real-life version of the movie They Live. Oh, hello there. YouTube game Guy Fiero here, back at it again as the Wizard of Shiztown. And yes, this is how I normally read my books. This is completely normal. What do you mean, other book? But my name is Elijah. I like to make video essays about whatever I want. And one thing that I don't see enough is enough men just talking about things like musicals. You know what? I never went to a musical in person before. I've always been okay with the concept, but I've never seen one in real life. So this video is about my experience going to see Wicked the Musical, learning more about the story itself, and finding a connection to it to something that I love very dearly, which is Metal Gear Solid, because they're both basically the same story. And if you want to hear more insane ramblings like that, please leave a like, a subscribe, share it with other people, share it with the theater nerds, share it with the gamers. The whole point of me making like weird ass content like this is so I can bring people together that would have nothing in common. Because if I'm going to be building this community through content, I want to build a community of people who actually find the overlap between Elphaba from Wicked and Big Boss from Solid Snake to actually find that interesting. So, if you find it interesting, like, share, subscribe it in your little circles. Also, follow me on Blue Sky. I've been hanging out there for a while, just like a little bit before the big waves that initially came in. So, like, I timed it perfect.
Step on it, Daddy!
Alright, guys, in order to break this down properly, first we gotta chop it up. So, in Metal Gear Solid 3, Big Boss, then known as Naked Snake, is forced to kill his mentor, the Boss, only to later discover she was actually a patriot who sacrificed everything for a country that would rather paint her as a traitor than admit the truth. In Wicked, Elphaba discovers that her hero, the Wizard, is deliberately causing the very problems that he claims to be solving, using Dr. Delamon's persecution and the oppression of animals as a way to consolidate power. Both characters react to these betrayals by trying to build something better. Big Boss establishes Military Sans Frontières, literally military without borders, a nation of soldiers free from government control, and Elphaba creates an underground railroad for persecuted animals and forms a resistance movement against the Wizard's regime. Both of them believe that they can fight the system by creating something outside of it, and both of them discover just how far power structures will go to crush any alternative to their control. So here's about the time when my edibles kicked in and it got really interesting. Both properties are deeply concerned with how official narratives get created, and Metal Gear Solid 2, so stay with me, theater kids. There's this whole plot about how a secret organization called the Lale Lule Lo controls society by manipulating digital information and deciding what stories people hear. In Wicked, Madame Morrible serves as the same function through her control of the press and the weather, literally manufacturing both the news and the conditions that make people comply with the wizard's rule. For Wicked fans wondering why I keep talking about Metal Gear, so imagine if instead of hearing about the wizard's propaganda machine, you got to see exactly how it worked, complete with philosophical monologues about the nature of truth and free will. That's what Metal Gear does, and that is why so many of us are just absolute Kojima stans. And for my gamers, imagine if instead of codec calls explaining the Patriots' control of information, you got show-stopping musical numbers about the personal cost of standing up to systemic oppression. That's what Wicked does, and that is why I completely understand why people are like musical and theater nerds. Like that, the shit was absolutely fantastic. It was great.
My head is reeling, my face is flushing. What is this feeling? I've heard it as a flame. Does it have a name? Yeah. Loathing, unadulterated loathing.
So, before we dig into the main characters of each respective story, let's go ahead and look at two side characters that make such an impact that they almost become secondary main characters, especially when it comes to their impact in the larger mythos and the larger extended universe and storyline of everything that happens from here on out. For right now, we'll call them inside operators because calling them heroes might have been a little bit too generous. I would say they're more like pragmatic villains who occasionally do the right thing for extremely questionable reasons. Think of them as the lawful evil entries on the world's most complicated alignment chart. You see, in Metal Gear, Revolver Ocelot isn't just playing both sides. He isn't playing three sides. I'm pretty sure he's quite literally playing at the end like four sides, 5 sides. He's playing all the sides, like including himself. And the whole time, he is just having the time of his life. He is loving every second of it. This is a guy who in Metal Gear Solid 3 literally fake betrays everyone so many times that he basically needs like a flowchart to keep track of it all. He tortures Snake, he helps Snake, he betrays the Russians and then helps the Russians and somehow manages to make everyone think that he's on their side while doing it. By Metal Gear Solid 4, he's so deep in his own web of deception that he has to use nanomachines and hypnotherapy to become a mental doppelganger of Liquid Snake just to maintain his cover story. And I'm saying by the events of Metal Gear Solid 4. So yes, anyways. That is not hero behavior, that's super villain dedication to the bit. Meanwhile, in Wicked, Galinda's hands aren't exactly clean either. In the book, which gets way darker than popular would have you believe, she actively participates in the wizard's regime long after she knows the truth of everything. While Elphaba is out there trying to save animals from literal genocide, Galinda's playing politics and maintaining her position as Oz's premier social influencer. She justifies it as working from within the system, but I mean, let's be honest here, she's choosing comfort and power over direct action every single time. And if you, oh man, there's layers to this. Oh man, like literally Kojima layers in regards to the casting and the people who are playing what characters and who they represent. Like, no, I didn't take another edible. But here's where it gets really interesting. Both Ocelot and Glinda represent this very specific type of antagonist, the kind who thinks that the only way to beat a corrupt system is to become its most successful product. In Metal Gear Solid 4, Ocelot's master plan involves literally becoming the thing Big Boss fought against, a dominating military power in order to, hold on here, destroy the system of dominating military powers. So yeah, I mean, obviously Ouroboros, blah, 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 blah. War never changes, war's always changing. Similarly, Glinda becomes the wizard's most effective propaganda tool in order to supposedly help undermine his propaganda. It's like they both read the same How to Fight Corruption by Becoming Super Corrupt handbook. This was probably written by Elon Musk, aka what the future president's followers actually believe. And really quick, let's talk about how this affects our relationships with our protagonist, the main protagonist, because this is where both properties really start to kind of twist the knife, so to speak. In Metal Gear Solid 5, we discovered that Ocelot has been so dedicated to Big Boss's vision that he's willing to help create a literal phantom of him, manipulating both an innocent medic and Big Boss's own men in service of his grand plan or grand vision, or more specifically, Ocelot's vision and version and interpretation of that grand plan. That is not friendship, that is cult behavior and obsession with extra steps. Going back to Wicked, Glinda's relationship with Elphaba becomes increasingly complicated as well by her political ambitions. Sure, For Good is a beautiful song about friendship, but in the book, their final meeting is less about mutual understanding and more about two people who have chosen fundamentally incompatible paths to fight the same system. Glinda basically tells Elphaba, hey, your way of fighting back is making my way of fighting back really inconvenient and hard and making me kind of look bad. Could you maybe like die in a way that helps my political career so I can go back to helping you? The thing about these quote unquote inside operators is that they both end up becoming perfect examples of that old Nietzsche quote about fighting monsters. You know, the one about becoming what you fight against. Or, you know, staring into the abyss long enough it starts staring back into you. Ocelot starts as his relatively straightforward triple agent, as straightforward as a triple agent can be, and ends up creating Outer Heaven, the very kind of military domination that the boss fought against. His justification? Well, we need absolute control to end control. My brother in nanomachines, that is not how this freedom works. And also, by the end of Wicked's novel, Glinda has essentially become Madame Morrible 2.0. Sure, she might occasionally use her powers to help the remaining animals, but she's still the smiling face of a regime that she knows is corrupt to its very core. She's playing 4D chess while actual people and animals are suffering. At least Ocelot had the decency to be obviously evil, with Glinda keeping the whole good witch persona while basically running a very obvious PR campaign for fascism. And I guess for the sake of being fair and the sake of being balanced, here's the thing. Let's not act like the heroes. I'm going to use the term protagonist from now on, and I hope that makes sense. Everyone loves to paint Elphaba as this tragic resistance fighter, but let's be real. By the end of the book, she's so deep in her own trauma and paranoia that she's basically holding Dorothy hostage over a pair of shoes. And that's not even particularly comfortable shoes as well. Meanwhile, Big Boss gets so caught up in his own legend that he literally lets someone else live his life as a phantom while he builds the very kind of military nation that the boss sacrificed herself to prevent. And this is where both stories really get interesting with time and perspective. In The Wizard of Oz, we see Elphaba as the Wicked Witch, the endpoint of her story, and in Wicked, we see how she got there. Same with Metal Gear. We spend most of the series hearing about Big Boss as this legendary soldier that ended up becoming a terrorist. Only to play through Metal Gear Solid 3 and Peace Walker and realize, oh, he was just a guy who really got screwed by the system. Like, even worse than veterans are screwed by our system now. And that's what makes both stories very compelling. They're not just saying, actually, the bad guy was a good guy all along. They're saying, hey, maybe the whole idea of good guys and bad guys is part of the problem. Hence why I don't like really using the term hero and villains. The Wizard and the Patriots, not the lolly-lulay-low, both maintain power by creating clear enemies for people to fear. But both stories show us that the truth is way messier. Everyone's got their own version of justice and their own idea of what freedom means, and their own way of justifying increasingly questionable choices. And perhaps nowhere are these parallels clearer than in Metal Gear Solid 2's eerily prophetic ending. A sequence so relevant to post-9/11 America that parts of it had to be altered before release. Just as Elphaba discovers the Wizard's manipulation of Oz's media, MGS2's Raiden learns that his entire reality has been curated by AI systems designed to control human consciousness through information control. And while Elphaba gets a show-stopping number about rejecting the system, Raiden gets one of gaming's most philosophical breakdowns about the nature of digital information and how it shapes human consciousness itself. Different approaches to the same existential crisis, so to speak. The game's famous ending sequence where Raiden strips away his dog tags, literally rejecting his programmed identity, mirrors Elphaba's defying gravity moment beat for beat. Both characters literally and figuratively shed the identities forced upon them by their societies. Both reach this moment after discovering their entire world is built on manufactured lies. Elphaba learns that the Wizard's campaign against animals is fabricated to maintain power, while Raiden discovers his entire mission is part of an AI experiment in social control. Both stories were telling us the same thing. Sometimes awakening to the truth requires you to reject everything you thought you knew about yourself. Going back to the original ending for Metal Gear Solid 2, the original ending itself featured Arsenal Gear, a massive weapon, just crashing into Manhattan. Imagery that was way too close to reality in late 2001. The game's final release still maintained its core message about how governments and power structures manipulate public opinion through selective information sharing. But now that message hit differently in a post-9/11 world where questioning the narrative had become increasingly taboo. This is where both properties were almost eerily precedent. When Colonel Campbell's AI starts breaking down at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, ranting about how information control shapes society, it's not that different from Madame Morrible's carefully crafted propaganda campaign. Both stories recognize that controlling the flow of information is more powerful than any conventional weapon. The Patriots use memes and digital manipulation, the Wizard used press releases and weather control. Different tools for the same playbook. And here is the kicker. Both properties were warning us about this stuff right as it was becoming our reality. While Wicked was using fantasy metaphors to explain how power structures labeled dissenters as quote-unquote wicked, Metal Gear Solid 2 was literally showing us how digital systems would be used to control narrative and manipulate public opinion. The fact that both ended up being right, just look at how social media and algorithmic content control and shape our worldview today. Just like this video, like, share, subscribe, it makes them feel less like entertainment properties and more like prophecies with really catchy show tunes, really confusing cutscenes, and more capitalism involved. And if you take the time to just do even a basic level of research, you will see that from all of this, Gregory Maguire and Hideo Kojima weren't copying each other at all. They both looked at the world around them and just came to eerily similar conclusions about power, propaganda, and how villains get made. Maguire took The Wizard of Oz and asked, what if we question this narrative, while Kojima took the entire military-industrial complex and asked, what if we questioned everything? Different starting points, same destination, stories about how the bad guys are often just people who saw behind the curtain and couldn't stay quiet about what they found. But think about it from a broader view here. These stories were developed completely independently of each other. One is a novel turned musical about a green witch in a fantasy land. The other is a video game series where a guy named Hot Coldman tries to launch a nuke from a singing robot. I did not make that up. Hot Coldman, we exist in the Hot Coldman timeline. On paper, they couldn't be more different, but they both end up tackling the same deep questions about humanity. How do you fight a corrupt system without becoming corrupt yourself? What's the real difference between a terrorist and a freedom fighter? Is it possible to change things from within, or do you really have to burn it all down to start over? Also, why do both properties have really such weird ideas about genetics? I'm just kidding, by the way. Also, this is why I love finding these very bizarre connections between different types of media. It's not just about being the guy at parties who can explain why Elphaba and Big Boss are technically the same character, though that is definitely a bonus. I think they probably at least get along in a smoke session or something like that. It's about understanding how different art forms can explore the same ideas in totally unique ways. When my kid watched Wicked, they got these huge political themes wrapped in amazing songs with spectacular visuals. When I played Metal Gear Solid 2 when I was around the same age as they are, I got those same themes delivered through increasingly bizarre codec calls that broke the fourth wall, and a man who's really passionate about the sociological implications of memes. Different packages, same contents. And experiencing both doesn't just make you appreciate one more. It helps you understand how universal these stories truly are.
From the ashes, a new America will be born! Evolved, but unchanged! The weak will be purged, and the strongest will thrive, free to live as they see fit. They'll make America great again!
What the hell are you talking about?
And to me, that's the real magic of consuming different types of media. You will start seeing these connections everywhere, and not in a I need to cover my walls in red string like Pepe Sylvia kind of way. It's more like multiple translations of the same human experience. Some people process these ideas better through Broadway showstoppers, and others, like me, through 90-minute cutscenes about the nature of warfare while being made two sunny-side-up eggs. Neither is wrong, they're just different languages telling the same story. And you know what? Maybe that's the biggest lesson here. In a world where we're constantly being told to pick sides and stay in our lane, consume what's only marketed directly to us, there's something kind of revolutionary about being the person who can find common threads between a Broadway musical and a video game about tactical espionage action. It's about being open to finding meaning everywhere, even if that meaning comes with either jazz hands or cardboard boxes. And maybe that's why both of these stories have really such strong staying power as well. Whether you're watching Elphaba rise above Oz on her broomstick, or you're seeing Big Boss walk away from his burning paradise in Zanzibar land, you're witnessing characters who dared to question the official narrative and paid the price for it. The fact that one version comes with an orchestral soundtrack and the other comes with a codec call doesn't make any version more or less meaningful. So yeah, maybe I am the guy who spent more than 20 minutes explaining why a Broadway musical and a video game series are secretly telling the same story, but I am also the guy who gets to watch his kid process complex ideas about power and resistance through both No Good Deeds and Peace Walker's AI boss fights. Because at the end of the day, that's what great storytelling does. It helps us process big ideas through whatever medium speaks to us. Sometimes it's through soaring ballads about defying gravity, sometimes it's through increasingly desperate calls about Metal Gears. Either way, the truth is out there, hiding in plain sight, just waiting for some nerd with too much time on their hands to connect all the dots. And hey, if nothing else, you have something interesting to talk about the next time that someone brings up Wicked, or, you know, the next time that someone brings up Metal Gear. Just maybe don't lead with any Metal Gear timelines, any nanomachines, explanation of memes, or anything like that. Just at least trust me on that. Oh, hello there. Don't mind me. I'm just doing another thing for a different project because, you know, I don't leave all sorts of little hidden clues around different things that I'm going to talk about in different videos. No, believe it or not, despite what the rumors may say, I don't have a almost Taylor Swift-like level of leaving clues within my videos, because that's not fun. That's not something that would be enjoyable, both as a person making and seeing how to it. But I mean, you know what, if you want to see that, then I guess the rumors should be true. But anyways, thank you for making it this far into the video. I really want to know your thoughts, and there's not enough just like regular ass dudes on YouTube talking about this stuff, so I'm glad to be one of the few. I mean, I'm up there with Chris Stuckman and Jeremy Jans now, and I guess Philip DeFranco. So I mean, once again, I defeat Philip DeFranco in being YouTube's best dad. I just want to know what anyone else thinks. I really enjoyed the musical. I actually do want to see the movie now, which is something I had no interest in until seeing the show. So it worked. It worked, and you know what, part of me is kind of mad to say that it worked, but at the same time, it worked. I'm probably gonna see the movie with my family now, so damn them, they did their jobs well. But I think if anything, that just speaks to the power of the actual product itself and not movie marketing. But anyways, what 2 random, obscure, weird things do you want me to try to find a way to make connections to? Because I will do it. Because I am that neurodivergent. So let me know what you think. Let me leave a comment, do all the YouTube-y stuff. And yeah, I am gonna try to get more stuff in there, but you know, I have other stuff going on that I don't occasionally leave clues about. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for checking out Girl Talk video. If you haven't, you should check it out. Especially if you're really into mashup music, or just kind of the way that mashup music is now. You got some history that you can learn. So yeah, thank you again for your time, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.